morning, aloha. Welcome to the State Capitol. My name is John Mazoon. I'm chairing the Human Services Committee. Today's date is January 31st, 2023. It's a little after 9:30 a.m. Before we get started, wanted to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and if I can, love to have our committee members introduce themselves. So, Vice Speaker, starting with you, please.
Gregory Lagar.
Thank you.
Oh, hi everybody. Jana Takane-Uchi, newly elected representative for House District 27. Morning.
Thank you very much.
Bert Kobayashi.
Thank you very much.
Diamond Garcia, District 42.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for being here. First bill on the agenda is House Bill 317. First off, we've got the Office of Public Defender. Provided testimony on Zoom. Okay, don't think we have the public defender on Zoom.
She's present.
She's present? Okay.
She's also, but we're trying to get the audio.
Oh, okay, okay. Why does it say Judith Clark? That's not the... Okay, guys, while we're working on that technical difficulty, let's go to Judiciary. Judge Park, Judge Park. Good morning, Judge. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Zeno, Vice Speaker, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Andrew Park. I'm a family court judge in the First Circuit, and I would submit on our written testimony. I would just like to emphasize that most of our comments are just maybe tweaks to help more efficiently and more quickly provide services to children with regards to the usage of insurance. Our primary opposition is in as much as the retroactive application portion of the bill gives us concern. But other than that, I will submit, and I'll be here for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Judge. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Okay, members, next up, HACDL, Hawaii Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys, Lawyers, I'm sorry. Anyone present, they provided testimony in support. Next up, we've got Berkeley Policy Advocacy Clinic. Provided testimony in support. Next up, we've got Residential Youth Services and Empowerment. Testimony in support. Next, we have Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii, Melissa Pavlicek.
Aloha, good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii, we offer some comments on this bill, and we appreciate you hearing it. We're ready for questions if you have.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, next, we have Shannon Rudolph as an individual. Provided testimony, late testimony in support. And we have the Kapalama Neighborhood Security Watch, provided testimony in support. Come on up, come on up. Good morning, good to see you again.
Chair.
Should be on, yes.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee. So I'm testifying in strong support of HB 317, charging extra fees and fines and court costs is harmful to young people because this practice in juvenile justice proceedings does not facilitate better results. It is not evidence-based and it does not rehabilitate or deter youth from crime. In fact, these economic burdens placed upon young people can undermine public safety by leading to recidivism of reoffense and an escalation of crime. Oftentimes, parents have to choose then between court costs and meeting their basic needs. Jurisdictions on the mainland spend more money in their collecting fines than they do in increasing the money from the revenues of fines. And many states are seeking to repeal the charges against juveniles. In 2021 and 2022, 27 states introduced legislation to end this practice in juvenile justice proceedings. California, Nevada, and Oregon, and numerous counties and other states that have also driven imposing fees and fines. So, in the words of the Equal Justice Initiative, more incarceration doesn't reduce violent crime. Using finding that the systemic flaws in our immune system, such as HB Union 7, then we will have a healthier system and healthier communities. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else willing to testify on this measure, please come on up. Okay, if not, members, we're going to take a short recess. We're having some technical difficulties. Short recess. patience, reconvening the hearing. We are still on House Bill 317. I believe we called for any last testifiers. Seeing none. Question, do we have a Zoom testifier?
Yes.
Oh, okay, is it, they're connected? Okay, okay. From Zoom, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. Aloha, Chair Mizuno, Vice Chair Amato, and members of the committee. My name is Darcia Forrester. I'm the supervisor of the Juvenile Division with the Office of the Public Defender. I apologize for not being present as my presence was required at Lake Court this morning. The Office of the Public Defender strongly supports the purpose of House Bill 317, and we join in the call for the prohibition of fines, fees, and court costs against any person adjudicated as a juvenile. House Bill 317 is in line with the core principles and goals espoused in Chapter 571, which established the family courts. House Bill 317 will help families concentrate their financial resources on accessing other services more in line with rehabilitation, like providing basic needs like food, transportation, and basic amenities, maintaining educational services, mental health services, and reducing some of the daily pressures on families living in poverty by eliminating court-imposed debt. So we do strongly support this bill. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this measure.
Thank you very much. Any further Zoom testifiers? Okay, and again, anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 317? If not, members, questions?
Question, Chair.
Yes, Representative Diamond Garcia.
For the judge, please. In the testimony that was submitted, it said that the courts currently, they rarely impose fines on youth. So in those situations where they do, what are some examples of those situations where they do impose fines?
An example that I can give from my own personal experience is there's currently a statute for driving without license for minors, which requires either community service or a fine for a minor. And in an instance where a young adult had a job and was in school and preferred to pay the fine rather than take away from their studies or lose hours at work, by agreement, I imposed that fine. But it's, Representative Garcia, as you noted, something that's rare.
Right.
And we would not typically do that over any family's objection.
And on average, what is the fine amount? Is there a specified amount, or it varies based upon your
That statute
discretion?
is unique in that it requires a $500 fine,
Okay.
which is, high for an adult or especially a young person.
Sure.
But like I said, in that particular case, it was by agreement, and it was something that the minor and the minor's family wanted. So there are instances when it happens. We can't say that it doesn't happen, but when it does, we try and ensure that it's still in that child's best interest.
And in the event that they can't afford to pay the fine, they have the option to do service in the community.
They can come back later and ask the court to convert that to community service. They can even pay that fine off through the accountability program that the judiciary has, which is kind of a separate thing, but
Okay.
they have options after the fact as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Park. Please stay there. I think we may have further questions. Members, further questions? Judge Park? Oh, yes, Representative Kobayashi.
I don't understand the testimony that you present. You said that the sole funding source for the driver education program is this special fund.
So the driver's education program, I'm sorry, Representative Kobayashi, is the driver's education program that persons have to attend by court order after something like, say, a DUI conviction or a reckless driving conviction, like court-ordered driver's education, not, and I'm sorry for the confusion, not like the driver's education that, young people, the class that they take to get their license.
But this category represents just a small portion of the offenses that would be covered by this bill, right?
Correct.
So what would be the, how would you say, loss in revenues if fees were not collected,
The
or
dri-
fees, fines, et cetera.
Thank you, Representative. The driver's education fee is a fee that's imposed typically by the district court. It's a court that I don't sit, so I apologize, I don't have those numbers, but it's a $7 fee. And there are not a whole lot of juvenile traffic offenders that go through the district court system, so I don't imagine it would be a huge number, but I can't say what it would be with any certainty at this time. I'm sorry. I can look that up and I can get back to your chambers.
No, I'm trying to figure out how much revenue would be lost and how much we would have to compensate somebody, probably judiciary branch.
I can go ahead and look into that and I can get back to your chambers. I don't want to give you a wrong number or a wrong guess.
Judge, could I intervene?
Go ahead.
Looking through the judiciary's testimony, it was noted that if there is a shortfall in the driver's ed special fund, the judiciary may come back to the legislature and request additional funding. So it was noted in the report by the comments by the judiciary, Representative Kobayashi. A good point, very good point. Further questions? Okay, if not, members, I have a question for Judge Park. Judge, it seems like the judiciary is very supportive. It says the intent and purpose of this bill are admirable. The judiciary also provided that the strategies employed are evidence-based. Family courts across the state already rarely impose fees, fines, or costs on youth and their parents. It seems that judiciary actually supports this program, wants to work with the legislature in crafting a good bill. We're not there yet. We've got to fix a few things. I acknowledge that. There was a concern with the retroactive segment. Can you explain a little bit to the committee members, and then I'll appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Zuno. I apologize that there wasn't more about that in the testimony. I can actually, it's an interesting case. The case that was referenced, the United States Supreme Court case, had to deal with Congress had passed a law which then became an amendment to the Securities Exchange Act. And that amendment, Section 27A, required the courts to reopen final judgments. And in deciding that case, the United States Supreme Court concluded, and I'll quote, we know of no previous instance in which Congress has enacted retroactive legislation requiring an Article III court to set aside a final judgment, and for good reason. The Constitution's separation of legislative and judicial powers denies it the authority to do so. Section 27A, that section referenced, is unconstitutional to the extent that it requires federal courts to reopen final judgments entered before its enactment. So that's just our concern, that the Part 6, and to the extent that, I guess, Part 5 references Part 6.
And definitely, I appreciate you providing explanation. Should this bill continue to move on, I'll definitely have that in the committee report. We'll note that as a concern, a violation of the possibly Constitution. Definitely have that on record. Thank you, Judge. Members, any further questions for Judge Park? Okay, if not, thank you, Judge. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, everyone. My pleasure.
Thank you. Again, members, last call. Any other questions before we move on to the next measure on the agenda? If not, thank you, members. We're going to move on to the next bill. We're at House Bill 445. First up, we've got Department of Human Services. DHS.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members. Scott Morishige, Administrator of the Benefit, Employment, and Support Services Division, on behalf of DHS and our Director, Kathy Betts. The Department supports the intent of this bill and respectfully suggests an amendment to extend the reporting deadline to prior to the 2025 legislative session. Extending the deadline will provide DHS and the Child Support Enforcement Agency more time to analyze federal and state policies, fiscal impact, and system requirements to implement the past due payments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Next up, Attorney General's Office.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Brandon Flores. I'm the Assistant Administrator for the Child Support Enforcement Agency. We support the task force, echoing the same concerns of the Department of Human Services. We need time to look into the logistics of implementing a pass-through, the system changes that need to be made, including the interface with the Department of Human Services and the financial ramifications of that. And we'd also agree to maybe extend the task force one additional year to 2025. Thank you for allowing me to testify, and I'll be looking for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, Sonata Club of Hilo. Zonta Club of Hilo, sorry about that.
Hello,
Hi.
this is Charlene
Oh, on
Foshi.
Zoom?
I'm from Hello. I represent the Zonta Club of Hilo and the other 4 clubs in the state of Hawaii. My recommendation is we are having another hearing on February 2nd. It's under the House Bill 1181, and it covers the same topic area. My recommendation is to have this matter carried over so that we can have a full discussion about how long it'll take, and if everybody's agreeable, perhaps some of the pass-through process could be accomplished before the 2025 deadline. This matter has been brought up before the legislature, I think for the last session as well. So everybody intends to do it, I think. There's really no opposition. It's a question of the mechanics of it all. So my recommendation is to carry this matter over and hear it at the same time with House Bill 1181. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks. Provided comments. Judiciary, State of Hawaii, Family Court. Provided comments. Opportunity, Youth Action Hawaii. Melissa Pavlicek. Saw Melissa earlier. Provided testimony in support. Next up, we've got the
The next bill.
Shoot. I apologize, guys. I went off script. I believe the last testimony was Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks. Do we have any Zoom testifiers on this bill? Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, sorry, members. I kind of went off script. I went to the other bill. But anyone else here, presently here, wishing to testify on House Bill 445? If not, members, questions? Questions to the audience or the Zoom audience? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For Department of Human Services, would you do this study with or without a bill?
Thank you, Representative. I think we're open to having continued dialogue. But, as mentioned in our testimony, I think it's just that there's a number of factors to consider. So it would take time, especially because of the potential systems modifications that would need to be made.
No, the point here is that this is not a new subject. Sometimes when you form a study group like this through law.
Oh, no, I understand, Representative. I think we're open to, having that further discussion on what it will take to implement this.
Okay. I mean, my concern is that a study group like this, created by law or resolution, normally would require posting of notice 6 days in advance, supposedly open sunshine, supposedly minutes to be kept, minutes to be available to the public, etc. Some study groups don't need all of that.
No, I think this is something that's been discussed for some time now. But as mentioned, there's a couple things happening currently with modernization of our eligibility systems on the DHS side. And as stated in the Attorney General's testimony, there would be changes needed to their system. I think this is something, again, we're open to having continued dialogue, and we have had dialogue on it. And, we're open to any suggestions from the legislature on how best to proceed on this.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? Well,
I have a
he's still
question.
there. Chair Bellotti.
Question for the Attorney General's maybe?
No, thanks, Scott.
So are you the recipient of the monies that do come from child support? Is the fund you hold?
So in these cases, when a family goes on TANF, they assign their rights to collect child support to our agency. So if we do collect child support from the non-custodial parent, we'll collect that and we'll pass that through actually to the Department of Human Services as reimbursement for providing TANF to the family, and then also a portion of that goes to the federal government. So we do not keep the money. We pass it through either to the state or to the federal government at this time.
Okay, so in the Hawaii Children's Action Network testimony, it states that the state keeps nearly half of those payments and passes the other half onto the federal government as reimbursement for
Yeah.
TANF assistance.
We actually keep 2/3 of the money goes to the state and 1/3 goes to it.
And then what is that 2/3 of the money spent on?
It's-
Maybe that's a DHS question.
Yeah, it's reimbursed as DHS for providing TANF benefits to the family.
So that is actually a number that you guys should have ready and available. That's not something that requires a study if you know it's 2/3. Can we have the aggregate numbers, and then what is that 2/3 or 1/3 spent by DHS? Is it administrative cost? I just don't understand it, because if it's custodial payments that are meant for child support and then you're using for administrative, that doesn't make sense to me.
It's actually in the Code of Federal Regulations and the Child Support Enforcement Agency as a 4D agency. So, for example, if child support was set as $100 for the non-custodial parent to pay to the custodial parent, however, that custodial parent is receiving TANF benefits, then they have to assign their rights, which is what Brandon was saying. They assign their rights to child support. So that $100 that is collected, there is a financial matching that we have to apply to it. So of that $500, I think right now the split is about 4.2 and 6.4, so it's 5.8 or something like that. So 4.2 is retained by the states, and we reimburse that to the Department of Human Services. The federal portion is retained by Child Support Enforcement Agency. As you know, we are federally funded 66%. That is what we use to fund the program. So every general fund dollar, we get to draw $2 of federal monies. That's what we use for our federal matching.
So you're using child support payments to get your federal matching, is what you're telling me?
So the child support entire program nationwide started as basically a welfare reimbursement system, where when states provide financial money to families, it was the job of the child support enforcement agencies to collect that money as reimbursement from the parent who should be supporting the family. If the family is not receiving TANF, then the money goes directly to the family. But because they are receiving money from the state, the situation right now is the money is collected as reimbursement to the state, to the extent that they pay the family benefits.
But the TANF monies are, the TANF monies are also federal monies.
Yes, and that's why it's a federal requirement that we do this.
Thank you. I don't know that that helps, but I guess it's if funds are going from child support to pay for administrative overhead, I think there's an inequity there that needs to be addressed. And I think that's the purpose of this bill. So thank you, Chair, for letting me ask. And I would like to actually, I think having the aggregate numbers of what goes to DHS, what goes to Child Support Enforcement Agency, and then what goes back to the federal government in terms of reimbursement would be very enlightening to see. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Chair Bellotti, should we vote to move this bill? I think what you brought up is a very good point. We should have that either in the bill or in the committee report. That data is very important. Thank you very much. Members, any further questions? Okay, I've got a question. DHS, Scott? Good morning. Again, thank you for being here. I had a question. I know that I believe I've scheduled another bill on pass-throughs for this Thursday. It's
Correct.
significantly more aggressive. It's a straight-out law. This is just a task force or a study group or a working group. So are you supportive of this measure, and or are you supportive of the next measure we're going to hear in a couple days? And give us the reason why. We're not saying good, bad, we're just, if you can explain to us.
No, thank you, Chair. I think our preference would be for the study so that we have time to assess, as we mentioned, what systems improvements would need to be made, as well as the potential impact on other benefits such as SNAP. So as stated in our testimony, I believe 90% of those receiving TANF are currently receiving SNAP. So while the pass-through would not impact their TANF benefit, it would potentially impact their SNAP, or it would impact their SNAP and cause a reduction. So we just want to make sure that we have time to adequately study the impact of that.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any further questions, members? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Members are going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. Now we're on House Bill 349. 349. First up, we've got Judiciary, State of Hawaii Family Court. Judiciary. Okay, they provided comments. Okay, now we have Melissa Pavlicek, Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii, provided testimony in support. Okay, next, Residential Youth Services and Empowerment, provided testimony in support. Hawaii Youth Services Network.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Judith Clark, Executive Director of Hawaii Youth Services Network. We are in support of this bill. We have looked at it and determined that it does include the necessary safeguards to ensure that the minor has the skills and resources to be able to live independently, is not seeking emancipation due to duress or coercion by a parent or guardian. I would note that in the Hawaii Street Youth Survey that was done several years ago, 41% of the respondents reported that they were forced to leave home by a parent, by their parents. The bill also ensures that the minors can continue to receive educational and other services that are intended for and needed by adolescents. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we've got Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii.
Good morning. Michael Galoyu Jr., Chair of the Stonewall Caucus for the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Happy New Year. On behalf of the caucus, we totally support this bill. Minors should be able to emancipate themselves, especially if they are being abused, as well as this would then therefore hopefully give them access to public assistance so that they are able to care for themselves. Far too often, our homeless unaccompanied minors are unable to access public assistance due to the fact that they're not emancipated. And as it currently under Hawaii state law, the only people that can avail themselves of emancipation are those that have the financial resources to go to court, to hire lawyers to do so. And this would avail the youth to be able to get out from underneath a stressful, abusive family life. So on behalf of the caucus, we thank you for hearing this bill, and we encourage you to pass it.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much, Michael. Next up, we've got Rainbow Family 808. Not present? Okay, thank you. And I've got our last testifier as an individual, Darla Carlin. Is Carlin? Is not present. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify either here in person or on Zoom on House Bill 349? If not, members, are there any questions? Questions? Seeing none, thank you, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. Going to 341. 341, Department of Human Services.
Good morning,
Hi.
Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Dana Luca from the Child Care Regulation Program Office on behalf of Department of Human Services Director Betts. The Department of Human Services appreciates the intent of the bill, stands on our written testimony, and would like to provide comments. Act 292, Session Laws of Hawaii 2022, similarly authorized DHS to set up an early childhood registry to maintain a repository of early childhood provider and staff information, and is codified in Section 346-187, Hawaii Revised Statutes, and substantially describes the same information that is requested in House Bill 341. The differences between Section 346-187 Hawaii Revised Statutes and this measure is that Section 346-187 does not mandate licensed providers and their employees to provide the info. It is voluntary. And Section 346-187 does not include information from individuals and child care facilities that are exempt from licensing. The department respectfully recommends that the desired information be provided voluntarily, as mandating licensed providers and employees of licensed providers creates additional regulation that will create a barrier for providers to maintain their licensure. In addition, the department recommends that individuals and child care facilities that are exempt from licensing not be required to provide the information in the Early Childhood Registry database, since we don't know the universe of all exempt providers and we don't collect and maintain their employee information. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 341? Okay, if not, anyone else on Zoom? No, thank you very much. Members, any questions? No questions? Okay, thank you very much, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda, House Bill 350. We've got Department of Human Services, DHS.
Good morning and aloha, Chair and
Good morning.
Committee members. My name is Sim Hitchens, Assistant Administrator of the Social Services Division. Child Welfare Services falls under our division. I'm speaking on behalf of the department. The department supports this measure, and I'm available for questions if you have them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii.
Good morning again, Representatives. Michael Goy Jr. again, Chair of the Stonewall Caucus. We stand in full support of this measure. Anything that you can do to help ensure that that there was reporting of child abuse, so it can be nipped in the bud, for lack of a better term, to help protect our youth as we've seen that this has been a systemic problem with some organizations, and that we need to do everything to make sure that everybody reports child abuse to protect our youth. Mahalo.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, next up, we've got, as an individual, Alec Marintek. Marintek? Is Alec here? Zoom? No? Okay, not present. Thank you. Provided testimony in support, members. Anyone else here or on Zoom wishing to testify on the measure before us? Yes, come on up.
Aloha, Kayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Human Services Committee. My name is Angela Melody Young, or Jizishon, and I'm testifying on behalf of CARES, my grassroots. We specialize in advocacy, research, and education. We are in strong support of HB 350. The purpose of this act is to require clergy and pastoral staff to report suspected abuse. This act will require allegations of abuse spoken during a confession, which is usually confidential, to be reported. Penitential communications is also known as confessions. This measure seeks to protect children from situations of abuse in which a witness has provided statements to a pastor or a clergy member. It is imperative to address child abuse vigilantly. The First Amendment constitutes a separation of powers of the church and the state, and the state must not interfere with the religious practices of the church. However, in this situation that the act seeks to address, there is imminent danger and immediate harm that will happen to a child if a state does not require the church to report any suspicions of abuse. And so, the First Amendment right is not unlimited when it is the government's burden and the duty and the due diligence of the state to protect kids from crimes and abuse. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Angela, could we get your written testimony, even if it's a little late? We just want to put it on the record on this bill. Thank you so much for your testimony. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on the measure before us? If not, members, questions? No questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next measure. We're going to move on to House Bill 583. First up, Attorney General's Office, please.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno, members of the committee. I'm Melissa Coloni, Deputy Attorney General. Our department's identified a potential constitutional issue under Article 7, Section 4 which provides in part, no grant of public money shall be made except pursuant to standards provided by law. This bill does not include standards by which the department is to distribute the grant funds, so we recommend adding standards into the bill. We attached to our testimony sample standards that you can use or modify or take it or leave it, or amend it to fit the legislature's intent for this bill. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I'll be over here till the end of the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. My name is Stacy Tonouchi from the Department of Human Services, representing Director Betts today. We stand on our written testimony and appreciate the intent of the bill. I'd like to respectively highlight the department's requests. Given the continuing economic impacts of COVID-19 on childcare facilities, ability to maintain sufficient staff levels, the department suggests the legislature consider changing the accreditation requirement to be voluntary until the child care workforce is stabilized. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Executive Office on Early Learning. Provided testimony in support. Next up, University of Hawaii at Manoa College of Education. Testimony in support, Hawaii Association of School Psychologists. Provided testimony in support, Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks. Testimony in support. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
See, I was going so fast.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And I won't spend too much of your time. I am the Director of Early Learning and Health Policy for Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks. We stand in strong support of this bill. We're here to answer any questions, and given the testimony by the Department of Human Services, we are also okay with an amendment to make the accreditation requirement for preschool open doors voluntary, just as long as it does not undermine this bill, because we think even providing accreditation supports with or without voluntary or mandatory measures in preschool open doors is important for our providers. Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we've got, I already mentioned Early Childhood Action Strategy. We provided testimony and support. We've got individuals. Ki Lo provided testimony and support. Raya Esteban, testimony in support. Ovanu Jameson, testimony in support. Elaine Yamashita, testimony in support. Alana Bauman, testimony in support. Anyone else wishing to testify either in person or on Zoom on House Bill 583? Okay, seeing none. Members, questions on House Bill 583? No questions? Thank you, members. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. We've got House Bill 339, Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Speaker, members of the committee. Joseph Campos, Deputy Director, Department of Human Services. The Department of Human Services supports this measure and requests a technical amendment that's stated at the end of the testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 339, here or on Zoom? Okay, if not, members, are there any questions? If not, oh yes, Representative Kobayashi, DHS.
For DHS, would there be other positions that you might want to add to this list?
At this point in time, this is a list of the positions that we would be adding. This is actually an extension or a new bill based on a bill that we presented last year. And it was the same 8 positions.
But that's all?
Correct. at this moment in time. In the future, should there be additional requirements, then that could be a
Thank you.
possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Representative. Further questions, members? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Members, going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. House Bill 552. First up, Hawaii Office of Community Services.
Good morning, Chair Misono and members of the distinguished committee. Giovanni Dela Cruz, Executive Director of the Office of Community Services. We stand on our written testimony in support of the measure. We'll be here for any question you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Imua Alliance. Here or on Zoom? Imua Alliance? No? Providing testimony in support. Next on 552, we've got individual Dara Carlin. Ms. Carlin? Don't see Ms. Carlin. She's not on Zoom. Okay. Yeah, Ms. Carlin did provide testimony in support. That's all the testimony I have. Anyone else in the audience or on Zoom wishing to testify on House Bill 552? Okay, if not, members. Oh, I'm sorry. Angela, come on up. 552? Okay.
Aloha Kayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Human Services Committee. My name is Angela, and I'm testifying in strong support on behalf of CARES. The purpose of this act is to require a reparation fund for trafficking victims. This act addresses systemic flaws and an antiquated perspective of trafficking, that those who are trafficked forced into modern-day slavery should be punished. The victims of trafficking should not be punished, but be given resources. The offenders and those who have exploited the system and other human beings should then be held accountable. Oftentimes, the reason why victims are susceptible to trafficking is because they are in vulnerable situations. They're victims of domestic abuse, they don't have economic opportunities, and have to face many disparities, like inaccessibility to healthcare and unfair socioeconomic disadvantages. All these factors can significantly affect vulnerable people to be trafficked. Victims of trafficking will greatly benefit from a reparation fund. Reparation means the act or process of making amends for a wrong. Victims of trafficking should not be criminalized, but instead be assisted with housing, healthcare, mental health services, childcare, educational, occupational programs, and transportation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. And Angela, if we could get that in the written form, the hard copy, so we can place it in the electronic file as part of the record of this bill.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on the measure before us? Okay, if not, members, questions? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For DHS.
Department of Human Services? If you can please come on up, we've got a question. This is on House Bill 552.
Good morning, Tim Hitchens with the Social Services Division, and I'll do my best.
Given that it seems that the revenues going into the fund don't sufficiently cover expenses, can you make up the differences from other sources?
I'm afraid that question would fall outside of what we cover with our services. We investigate, trafficking with the provider, but I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, it might be more in the not under the department though. Sorry.
Actually, Representative Kobayashi, that still is a good point on concerns with funding or inadequate funding. So I think should this bill move out, we should probably put that concern and flag it in the committee report. So I wanted to thank you for bringing that up. Members, any further questions?
I have a question, Chair.
Yes,
I don't know
Representative
if it's
Garcia.
to DHS, I'm not too sure, but my question is, currently there's a victim services fund for those who were trafficked. This would convert it to a human trafficking reparations fund, and the purposes would go directly to those who were trafficked. So currently, I don't know if anyone here knows the answer to it, but in the Victim Services Fund currently, where does that money go now, and how does that money help those who were trafficked? Does anyone know that?
Mr. Dela Cruz, you want to take a stab at it?
Good morning, Chair, again. Good morning, Representative Garcia. Thank you for putting that precursor to me coming up here. The program predates me in the office, Representative. Based on the limited information that we have gathered, the act that created the fund was intended to complement what Office of Community Services had done during that time, which is a federally funded human trafficking grant from the U.S. Department of Justice under the Office of Victims of Crime Division. This was to provide a comprehensive service to both sex and labor trafficking victims, to provide case management, legal services, and health services. Now, what happened, Representative, is that it was the judiciary that set up those accounts, and OCS was merely a recipient. And based on the record that we have now, the fund, which is an account, the account that under supervision of OCS at least currently only hold $2,750, which is very small to have any meaningful services. So Representative Kobayashi saw that come. So I think that was a very good question that he brought that up.
So just to clarify, the Victim Services Fund currently has $2,700 in it?
That's for the portion that OCS control.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good point, Representative Garcia. We can, if you'd like, we can put also that in the committee report, just to red flag it for the next committee, should they hear this measure. Further questions, members? Okay, if not, thank you for the questions, members. We are going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. This is 579. 579, first up, Attorney General's Office, 579.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Van Acker. I'm a supervising Deputy Attorney General with the Department of the Attorney General's Special Investigation and Prosecution Division. We do stand on the testimony we provided. We want to put out two more comments. First, we do have some concerns with the relatively short time horizons to effectuate this broad mandate, and secondly, the same general concern based on the lack of additional funding for this very broad mandate. I look forward to any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next up, Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Provided testimony in support. Next, we have the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. They're not on Zoom. Provided testimony in support. Next up, Catholic Charities of Hawaii. Provided testimony. Oh, yes, thank you for being here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm Betty Lou Larson, representing Rob Van Tassel of Catholic Charities Hawaii. Catholic Charities has had quite a bit of experience providing therapeutic services to individuals with complex trauma, including victims of sex trafficking. In our experience, working with youth, many are unaware of their own vulnerability to being exploited and becoming a victim of sex trafficking. We support this bill because we feel it does provide a comprehensive approach. We really have to look at the shocking statistics. I won't quote them, they're in my testimony. But these statistics show that there's a great need, and the children often may not know where to turn or how to escape from this crime. We need a strategy and a plan that really looks at how to provide more support and services, but also there's a great need for public education, public awareness, so that both children and the general community are more aware of this issue. It's often hidden, and it often targets the most vulnerable children. So we really need to target those who are less aware of this issue. We feel that this response in this bill would really confront the issue and provide best practices to prevent, identify, and address the issue overall. So we urge your support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Okay, thank you. Next up, Pacific Survivor Center, providing testimony in support. Zonta Club of Hilo.
Again, good morning. My name is Charlene Iboshi. Just to let you know, I represent the Zonta Club of Hilo and those other clubs throughout the state. Our position, we support the bill, especially on prevention and awareness. And I won't go into great details. Ms. Larson explained it quite well. I will say to you that I'm so old, and I was in the prosecutor's office, that I was on the human trafficking task force before there was a law. And we have come a long way in terms of the legislature providing good laws to allow for prosecution for human trafficking, but we're a long way from solving the issues. These are very difficult cases to, one, investigate, to get disclosure, and then to prosecute. These are not easy cases. So that's based on our own personal experience. So I think whatever support we can provide to these victims, and many of them don't even realize they're victims, as was stated earlier. So the Zonta Club of Hilo supports the prevention and awareness parts of this bill, as well as data collection and reporting. That part will take time. It's not going to be like one and done. It's going to take probably 2 or 3 years to develop a comprehensive data collection methodology and system and coordination. So just being aware of that, I do appreciate that the Attorney General's office, we just started, and so give them some time. But once they get that going, I think they can have a more effective way to give the legislators as well as policymakers recommendations on how to prevent these crimes through awareness, and then secondary prevention when it is disclosed through truancy reports of chronic runaways and so forth. So intervention can be done earlier rather than when they are caught prostituting. Okay, thank you, and I appreciate it, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we've got as individuals, Bethany Hall. Providing testimony in support, Dara Carlin. Provided testimony in support, Leah Minton. Provided testimony in support, Alec Marentic. Provided testimony in support. Do we have anyone here, present here or on Zoom? Yes, Angela, please come on up.
Aloha, Kayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Human Services Committee. My name is Angela Melody Young, and I testify in strong support of HB 579. Children in Hawaii are especially vulnerable to being trafficked. Trafficking is especially common in Hawaii, being that we are an international tour destination for people from everywhere in the world, and because we are at the heart of the naval and military stations here in the Pacific. Also, we have many culturally diverse demographics who experience socioeconomic disparities and are economically disadvantaged because of their immigration status or because English is not their native language. The playing field to a career is then not as equitable for them. And many of the victims of trafficking are native Hawaiian. In August 2022, a FBI operation found traffickers in Oahu and identified 85 victims whose average age was 15 years old, and the youngest being 11 years old. I beseech each one of you representatives. There are mothers in the audience, there are fathers, future mothers, and grandparents. This is a very concerning subject matter. There has been a federal response that has been fueled with a sense of urgency. The trafficking initiatives are mostly focused on protection and prevention and bringing justice to the situation. The purpose of this act is to require the AG to create a comprehensive report about all the aspects of trafficking so that there can be a level of integrated knowledge and integrated resources to provide additional support to victims. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thanks, Angela. And if you can provide that testimony, hard copy, we want to just get that in the record.
Okay, Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 579? If not, members, questions? Yes, Chair Bellotti?
The speaker from the Attorney General's office, can you just explain the staffing in the Special Investigation and Prosecution Division?
Absolutely. So the Special Investigation and Prosecution Division is comprised of 5 Deputy Attorneys General, 7, it's appropriated for 7 Investigator 5 positions, 3 analysts, 2 legal clerks, 2 legal assistants, a Human Services Professional 5, and a Human Trafficking Abatement Coordinator.
And are all of these positions staffed up and filled?
No. As of now, we've filled our Deputy Attorney General positions. We've filled our analyst positions. We're in the process of bringing on a legal clerk. So we've been very successful with respect to the exempt positions, and we're working very hard to fill the remaining positions. We do have 1 Investigator 5 as well, pardon me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further questions, members? Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you for the testimony. We're going to move on to the next bill on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Members, I'm going to ask for your kind indulgence. DHS would like to clarify testimony on House Bill 339. This was several bills ago. DHS, if you wanted to come on up. Okay, members, again, this was several bills back. 339, DHS wants to provide clarification. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Speaker, members of the committee. I just wanted to clarify my response to Representative Kobayashi's question. House Bill 339, those were the only positions we were seeking to be exempt. However, we do have House Bill 1066 and its companion bill, Senate Bill 1364, which is regarding the creation of the reestablishment of the 2nd Deputy Director position for the Department of Human Services, as well as a private secretary. So just to be, to clarify my response, there are 2 additional positions that would fall under Section 76. So we just wanted to clarify that.
For members, questions, please? Questions? Okay, for the edification of the members and myself, there might not be time to hear House Bill 1066. Because this relates to positions, would DHS oppose a friendly amendment to add to 8 positions, 9, 10, 1 being Deputy Director, the 2nd Deputy Director position, and a Secretary position?
We would welcome that and would be thankful to the committee if they did that.
Right, again, just to confirm, there's 8 positions in this bill. We're probably not going to hear House Bill 1066. We're going to extract that language for those 2 positions, 1 for the 2nd Deputy Director, 1 for the Secretary. That'll then equate to 10 positions, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Rep. Kobayashi, that answers your question, I guess? Yes, I'm glad he brought that up.
Yes,
I would have missed it, so.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that.
Okay, we will put that friendly amendment in should this bill pass.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Representative Kobayashi. Good question. Okay. Members, thank you very much for your kind indulgence. We're gonna move on to the next measure on the agenda. This will be House Bill 439. House Bill 439. First up, Hawaiian Office of Community Services. Mr. Dela Cruz.
Good morning again, Chair and members of this distinguished committee. The Office of Community Services has submitted its written testimony on the measure in strong support, and just would like to highlight that we offer some minor amendments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, Office of Language Access.
Good morning, Chair Mizuno and member of the committee. Apirak Bamburuan, Executive Director for the Office of Language Access. We stand on our written testimony offering comment on this measure. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and be available for any question the committee may have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, next up, Pacific Gateway Center. provided testimony in support, Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights.
Aloha, Chair Mizuno and members of the committee. Eliza Ryan Gill, coordinator of the Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights. We represent 25 organizations across the state that serve immigrants and migrants in Hawaii. So we just wanted to point out and think we are in strong support of this bill, and wanted to use an example really quickly from House District 29, which happens to be 51% foreign-born and 62%, sorry, I run out of breath easily now, and 62% speak a language other than English. We have 50,000 residents of Hawaii that are eligible to naturalize in the state of Hawaii, and according to the Migration Policy Institute, naturalized citizens earn 50 to 70% more than non-citizens. So if you look at two zip codes in particular, 96817, there are over 4,000 limited or LPRs ready to naturalize. In 96819, there are nearly 4,000 LPRs ready to naturalize. By investing in an office like this, we can invest in the people that live and work in our state and raise their income, therefore addressing some of the affordability issues that we have in the state. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Okay, next up, Filipinos for Affirmative Action. Agnes Malate, not present. Provided testimony in support. Next, we've got Hawaii Friends of Civil Rights, Amy Agbayani. Hi, Doctor.
Hi, Representative and members of the committee. Thank you very much for hearing this bill. There are three friendly amendments that I'd like to identify, which I think the Office of Community Services also identified. Very minor, and it's to make it more comprehensive and flexible in terms of the services that would be offered. One, it's in my testimony, it's on section 2, page 5. All of these are, one would change the word shall to may, and the second one would add office services including but not limited to, so that would provide more flexibility. And section 2, page 5 also, oversee and monitor the Immigrant Resource Center program, which the legislature approved last year, and we're very, very grateful for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wayani. Thank you very much. Okay, members, I've got 8 individuals supporting testimony, all in support. For those individuals, if you're here in person or on Zoom, would you like to present your testimony?
Mr. Chair, this is Wilfredo Tungo. I'd like to testify via Zoom, if possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. My name is Wilfredo Tungo. I'm a retired attorney, and I'm testifying as an individual, but basically with familiarity with immigrants. I was on the board of Naloyo Legal Services, now known as the Hawaii Justice Immigration Center, for 10 years, also a past vice president. I'm also a retired attorney from the EEOC Hawaii Legal Office. And finally, as an immigrant myself, I really do identify with the need to serve our immigration population. You know, as the finding have shown, your findings here, a large number of the workforce, especially in the agricultural, the hospitality, and the healthcare consists of immigrants. So this bill will basically be an investment to help newly arrived immigrants here in our state. And I know that, you know, it may sound like, oh, okay, we don't need to help them, they can fend for themselves. And, obviously that's not true, because I also know, when I worked at the Department of Health as an affirmative action officer, that language is also a problem, okay? And so a lot of them are limited English population, or LEP as we would say. So they also need guidance. And so the services that's going to be offered here, stated in the bill, would be very helpful to these immigrants, okay? A lot of them also encounter discrimination, so they need some help. At the very least, the intake center can guide them to the appropriate agencies such as the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission or the EEOC, if they think that there's a possibility that the immigrant is being discriminated against. And the same thing for health services. A lot of recent immigrants are not familiar with the health requirements or where to go. For example, tuberculosis, okay, that's a requirement. If you want to work, you have to get clearance. So someone has to be able to, assist them. And I think the intake services would be able to do that.
Attorney Wilfredo, yes, Chair would be inclined to recommend that we pass this measure with amendments. So we're very grateful for your testimony on Zoom. Did you want to add any last, the next 20 seconds, if you could just sum up, we really appreciate it. And thank you for your testimony.
There's one legal thing that I may say that it may cause some concern, and maybe the Department Attorney General can look into it, which is, it includes services to be provided to undocumented persons and other persons regardless of the person's immigration status. I'm not sure, but like I said, it may create conflict, especially with federal law, because, the definition of immigrants is specified in the federal law. And if federal funds are included in this bill, or the OCS receives some federal funds, it may present some kind of problem if those two categories are included. But again, that's for the Attorney General to look into this. Otherwise, the bill is, I strongly support the bill, and I hope that the committee will pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further testimony, either in person or on Zoom? No? Okay, members, questions? Any questions? Not to the testifiers, thank you very much. I had a question. If I can bring up the Hawaii Friends of Civil Rights, as well as the Office of Language Access, the Executive Director, you both can come on up. For our members, I'm inclined to recommend that we pass this out. So, are you okay with the amendments recommended by Dr. Abayani? You guys are both A-okay on that?
Yes, we have a chance to discuss prior to come to this meeting, to this hearing, and then we are in agreement with the amendment offered by
Complete
Dr.
agreement from Dr. Agbayani's testimony.
That's right.
Okay, that's
As
what
well
we're
as
going to base it on.
Office of Community Service
Good,
recommended
good.
it.
That's Agnes, right?
No,
Oh.
Giovanni recommended it.
Oh, okay. So if you're fine, I'm gonna recommend that we take Dr. Agbayani, your recommended amendments, and roll that into the bill if everyone's in agreement. You guys good? Okay.
3 minor amendments.
Got it.
Thank
Not
you.
2, 3, got it.
3.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any further questions? Okay, thanks. Thank you for helping us. Okay, thank you very much. Members, we're going to move on to House Bill 470. Department of Human Services, please.
Good morning, aloha, Chair, Board, or Committee, sorry. Tim Hitchens with the Social Services Division. Child Welfare Services falls within the division. I'm here on behalf of the department, and we stand on our written testimony. offering comments, and I'm here for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Office of Youth Services. Provided.
Aloha, Chair.
Hi,
Yes,
on Zoom. Gotcha.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Leanne Gillespie. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Youth Services. The OAS submits comments. Children in need of emergency shelter often have experienced trauma and need a place of refuge that ensures their safety and well-being. The Office of Youth Services supports emergency shelters for children being licensed, and we do require licensure for homeless shelter services. Thank you very much for this opportunity to comment. I'm available for questions if needed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii.
Good morning again. Michael Glory Jr., Chair of the Stonewall Caucus for the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in full support of this measure. We do want it noted that when the measure was passed in 2020, that we opposed the sunset date. So we're glad to see the legislature going back and fixing that sunset clause. We do point you to page 2 of the DHS's testimony on number 3, where it limits the number of minors that are allowed to be held by any shelter to 5. That as we stated in our testimony when this measure was first passed, we opposed that limit because of the undue burden it puts on the providers. That number should be lifted for minors, should be lifted to at least 10. And since this is a new year, we do want to remind everybody the reason this is an LGBTQIA plus issue is that out of the, while we represent around 8 to 10% of the population of the homeless unaccompanied minors, we represent 40%. And that is due to the fact that LGBTQIA youth are thrown out of their houses or running away from abusive parents, be it physically or mentally abused parents. So that's the reason this is an LGBTQIA issue, and you will be hearing us on this. And this is we look forward to your support of this measure as we move forward. Mahalo.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, next up, Rainbow Family 808. Rainbow Family 808 provided testimony in support. Next up, Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii, Melissa Pavlicek.
Thank you. Aloha. My name is Melissa Pavlicek on behalf of the Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii Coalition. We are comprised of Partners in Development, Hale Kipa, Kinai'eha, and RISE, and we strongly support this measure. I would be concerned about restricting it too much or amending it in such a way that defeats the purpose, which is to provide emergency shelter for youth who are in crisis. And there are times when youth are afraid to access facilities that might land them in the judicial system or in a foster care or return them to an abusive family. So there is a role for the current law to be extended, and we would love the opportunity to work with stakeholders like the Department of Human Services and Office of Youth Services if we can come up with any additional language, but we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, next up, Residential Youth Services and Empowerment. Provided testimony in support, Hawaii Youth Services Network. Judy Clark.
Aloha. I'm Judith Clark, Executive Director of Hawaii Youth Services Network, and we support the intent of this bill, enabling minors to consent to admission to an emergency youth shelter, ensures that they are able to escape the dangers of living on the street in those rare situations where consent from a parent or guardian cannot be obtained. In some circumstances, notifying the parent or guardian of the minor's location could increase the risk of harm by family members or guardians. Physical, sexual, and emotional abuse committed by a family member or guardian is often the reason why the minor is seeking a safe shelter. Provider coordination with child welfare services as a reason to allow minor consent for shelter increases the safety of these vulnerable youth. We have one concern, however, and that is that the reason a sunset clause was included in the 2021 legislation was to allow Department of Human Services to amend its licensing rule for shelters to address this issue. We believe that the statute should be extended but not made permanent so that DHS can make the needed rule changes. We do believe that shelters that house minors should be licensed and regulated. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, members, next up I've got an individual, Will Karen, provided testimony in support. Okay, anyone else, present or on Zoom, wishing to testify on this bill, on the measure before us? Okay, if not, members, question. Yeah, Chair Bellotti.
Chair, is Carla Hauser or anyone from RISE here?
Bellotti, RISE is a member of the Opportunity Youth Action HUI, and I understand from some text messages that they inadvertently were not able to register so they can access the hearing online.
Okay,
So if there's something that I can answer, or if we can respond to it after the hearing, I apologize. They weren't able to join us and get a link.
I think, Ms. Pavlicek, you can answer my questions. What is the source of the 5-person licensure requirement or in this measure?
My understanding is that prior to this enactment in 2021, only licensed child care facilities could shelter youth, and that certain organizations and facilities, I believe RISE may have been one of them, were not able to qualify for licensure. So the request in this bill is simply to allow these facilities to continue to serve youth. And as the discussion of the testifiers was, there is some desire to have a licensure process for the non-child care facilities, but there hasn't been any administrative rules enacted yet.
Okay, so, but my question is, what is the source? Because I'm imagining, or maybe you aren't the right person.
Greater capacity would be good. Is that your question?
Well, there's a limit of 5 currently, somewhere in the statute. What is the basis for that limitation? Is it
I
best
am not
practices?
familiar,
Is it just a bureaucratic number that's arbitrary? RISE says it has sheltered 27 unaccompanied minors. Members of this legislature have gone out and seen the facilities at RISE. It has more, I believe, capacity than 5 minors, but it is an amazing facility. And if at the same time I'm seeing that CWS and OIS is insisting that licensure is going to have to be a provision of this, are we actually just creating a system that's going to shut out the most successful shelters we now have?
I think that's the concern, and I would be glad to have the executive director of RISE follow up with the chair and the committee to address any other additional questions.
Okay, maybe is there someone from DHS who can best answer this question?
Yes. Zoom?
Or no, we have someone here in the
DHS?
audience.
Okay, yeah, if you can come on up and help answer the question of Chair Bellotti.
Sure, yes. We require that all of our facilities are licensed.
What is the basis of the 5 person limitation?
This comes from the Hawaii Revised Statutes 346.
And what is the basis of that
The basis
statute?
of the 5. I'm afraid I'm not prepared to speak to that. I'll see if someone else from the department might.
Okay, I think it's really important if there's best practices across the nation that allow for bigger capacity, that this administration needs to look at those best practices and change your rules. RISE has won a multi-million-dollar, my understanding, a multi-million-dollar grant for best practices, and they're doing amazing things. And so if the rules are not matched up with best practices, I think that needs to be addressed. And perhaps we need to take a look at it, because if there's a successful program addressing homeless youth, which is what my understanding RISE is, and then I see in this testimony that there is requirements. Here's another question. I'm sorry, Chair. Does CWS currently have a contract with RISE?
I'm going to defer to my administrator if that's okay. I saw her starting to motion this direction. She might be able to speak more articulately than I can to this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Daisy Hartsfield. I'm the administrator for the Social Services Division, and I hope that I can provide more information to address the question that was posed by Representative Bellotti. So you had specifically asked about the limitation to the number of 5, and that's specific to the definition of provider, because my understanding is anything, any number above 5 is considered a child care institution. And so that's where the number 5 comes from. So by limiting it to 5, the provider definition is, in terms of requirements, is less restrictive. So that's why the limitation is the number 5. So we did consult with the Administration for Children and Families when we were looking at amending the administrative rules when this initial bill was passed 2 years ago. And they pointed us to a provision to the act that is cited in our testimony, Act 130. And that requirement is that for children who are involved in the legal system as well as child welfare, in terms of shelter placement, it had to be in a licensed facility. And that's why we're proposing the amendment on page 3 of our testimony to add that additional language. We understand the work that is being done by RISE, and we actually support what they're doing. When we considered amending the administrative rules so that they would be exempt from licensing, we had to look at the bigger picture, because many of our other shelter providers are licensed. And if we took away that licensing requirement, that would be a chilling effect, and that would be an incentive for other agencies to not consider licensure. So we did reach out to RISE to find out what the problem was in trying to get licensed, but we haven't had a fruitful discussion as to what the barriers have been in terms of RISE being licensed. So I can't answer as to why RISE has not considered licensing, because we have offered assisting them with trying to address what the problems might be that might prevent them from being licensed, because we do appreciate that the work that they do with our homeless youth. So I hope that answers at least part of your question.
I think for further discussion, I'm looking at the definition of Ms. Hartsfield, that child care carrying institution authorized by the department under section 34(6)-17. Some of these definitions are circular. So if we need to further look at this, so that if other amendments in HRS needs to be amended, and again, this should align with best practices. So it's not just about like pointing to what's in the statute, but what is best practice in this arena.
I agree. Agree.
So if, this has been a pilot project for over, 2 years at this point. Administrative rules, if they need to be amended to reflect best practice to enable these facilities, and maybe RISE is not a child caring institution. Maybe it is more under a child placing organization, which would have a different definition, and therefore then does not require necessarily licensure. I don't know what the solution is, but we shouldn't let some of these bureaucratic, what appears to me as bureaucracy, kind of hinder the services that we need. Otherwise, we may have to ask the governor for another emergency order for homeless youth. So I think that the issue has been highlighted. So if we could move forward, I mean, I appreciate it, but I think we really need to hone in on this, because if we pass amendments, open up this program, remove the sunset date, then we better make sure we're creating something and not just creating something that's going to shut out the providers we know that exist.
I agree, and I believe that the bill that was passed last session regarding safe spaces, that's under OIS, that might be a way for us to see if that's effective and if that meets the needs of what this bill had initially intended in terms of providing shelter spaces for homeless youth.
Yeah, can you stay there? I want to follow up on Chair Bellatti's questions, and maybe the Attorney Generals may want to jump in and help us if need be, but Representative Bellotti had a good point, as well as Michael from the Hawaii Democratic Party. You know, limiting it to 5 spaces, it might be easier, but the question is, legally, what precludes us from expanding it to 10 or more?
It has to do with the federal requirement. So we could increase it, but then they wouldn't be considered a provider. They would be considered a child care institution.
What would be the ramifications? Will we lose federal funding?
We would lose, yes, we would lose federal funding.
Okay, that explains. I'm still going to put in the committee report, but I think, you know, the question brought up by Chair Bellotti and Michael of the Hawaii Democratic Party, they're good questions, and I think we really need to work through this. But
I agree, and those have been questions that were brought up as we looked at amending the administrative rules, and we were fortunate in the sense that House Bill 1069 came along at the last legislative session because it addressed a lot of what we were trying to do in amending the bills for this, for the bill that was passed for this statute.
Right. And I think our members probably do agree with DHS that we should require these shelters to be licensed. It's just a consumer protection issue, especially for our minors. So I anticipate we're going to be supporting that recommended amendment.
Right.
Okay. Members, any other questions? We're good? We're good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, members, any last questions for any of the testifiers? Okay, if not, members, the following bills are for decision-making purposes only to insert substantive provisions into the short form bill. A public hearing will be scheduled at a later date, at which time testimony will be accepted. Members, I'm just going to go quickly through these bills. House Bill 221 is a short form bill. It's going to be to extend Medicaid coverage for incarcerated women. Next bill would be House Bill 222 with the general title relating to human services. This deals with Medicaid reimbursement rate. Members, next bill is House Bill 223 relating to human services. This deals with DHS and Office of Youth Services appropriation. Next bill is 224, general title relating to human services. This relates to public housing, providing on-the-job training for employment. This is under DHS, this is public housing. Next bill is House Bill 225, relating to human services. The contents relates to child welfare system to comply with federal regulations, and which may help DHS to receive federal matching funds. So at this point, when we go to decision making, that will be the recommendation to pass the short form bills, and then from there on it goes off to referral. And I think these bills will come back to our committee. I don't know, again, it's up to the referring group to determine that. So with that said, we're gonna have decision making, Chair Bellotti, was agreed upon time 11:30? 11:30 or, yeah? Okay, so we're going to come back to 11:30, but I'm going to ask members that are here, stay here for a couple minutes. I want you guys to work with me, and I'm going to ask Judge Park if he can stay here for a few minutes. On the first bill, it's a very important bill, a big bill, it's complicated. There needs to be a lot of changes to this, and I don't want to rush it through, so I want to make sure we understand what we're doing and make the most reasonable amendments to try to move this bill, because if not, this bill could be in jeopardy. So I'm going to just work on it for 5 minutes. If we're done in 5 minutes, great. Everyone, if we can just reconvene at 11:30 for decision making. You guys good? Okay. Testifiers, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to have recess right now. Come back for decision making at 11:30 a.m. recess. Reconvening decision-making. And for today's agenda, first bill on the agenda was House Bill 317. Okay, members, thank you for your help. Chair's recommendation, tech amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Another amendment, we're going to change the phrase during a person's minority. We're going to change that to while the person was a minor under the age of 18. Members, we're going to delete section 18 on page 54. Chair believes this falls outside the intent of the bill. Again, another amendment, delete section 18 on page 54. There was a question on whether the state will now be responsible for the cost of the driver's education programs and substance abuse counseling when the offender is a minor. So judiciary indicated that they would support that unless covered by insurance or parents or custodian, the cost. Judiciary gave us really good language. I want to use their language. Basically, it provides nothing in this section shall prohibit the utilization of treatment services provided or covered by a health insurance plan under which the child is already a covered person or beneficiary. Provided further that co-payments required by the insurer shall be paid by the insured. Okay, so we're going to place that into various parts of the bill. I've got, I think, pages 32, 56, 83, 88. Basically, we're going to adopt the judiciary's amendments to allow for payment by the insurance. Okay, in talking with Judge Park, we want to delete, we're going to strike through, guys. We're going to delete or strike through the retroactive portion of the bill. That's causing us a lot of problems. In addition, this may violate the Constitution. If it violates the Constitution, this bill's dead. So strike through, we're going to delete retroactive portions of the bill. Okay, in the committee report, we're also going to strike through the interstate compact on juveniles. This could also violate the Constitution. In talking with Judge Park, we believe the right thing to do is strike through. We're going to delete this section entirely. We also want to put in committee report judiciary's concern regarding statewide driver's education program special fund. If we're going to use this to help cover our minors, this may create a shortfall in the future. Just want to put a heads up that the legislature may be requested for additional funding if this special fund is depleted. So we'll put that in the committee report. Also, the committee report, I wanted to show the next committee that judiciary supports the intent of this bill. We're going to place in the committee report the words of the judiciary as follows. The intent and purposes of this bill are admirable. The strategies employed are evidence-based. Family courts across the state already rarely impose fines, fees, or costs on youth and their parents. So it shows that judiciary supports this measure. There's a lot of work on it. I'll be the first to admit this is a work in progress. It's not ready for prime time, but we're doing all we can to give this bill a chance. So I'm hopeful that judiciary can also work with Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee can work with judiciary as well as the Attorney Generals on any more fixes to the bill. Members, those are my recommendations. Did I leave anything out? Anyone else wanted to add anything? Okay, if not, recommendation, members, is to pass with those amendments and a defective date of July 30th, 3000.
Members are voting on HB 317. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair is excused. Representative Bellotti? Aye. Representative Iligan?
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi? Aye. I vote aye. Representative Nishimoto? Aye. Representative Garcia?
No.
Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Next bill on the agenda is House Bill 445. It's too late? Okay, my bad. I got it. It's supposed to be June 30th, okay. I apologize. The effective date should have been June 30th, not July 30th. And I think we discussed it in prior to decision making. Thank you for the correction. Okay, guys, next bill is House Bill 445. Recommendation passed with an HD1 tech amendments, defect the date to June 30th, 3000. We're going to adopt the Department of Human Services amendments for the joint report of findings and recommendations to be submitted to the legislature no later than 20 days before the convening of the regular session 2025. Members, tech amendment will change from study group. We'll be using work group or working group instead of study group. In addition, in the committee report, we'd like to put Child Support Enforcement Agency's words that the pass-through is not yet ready. They're not ready to implement a pass-through. CSEA is completing the process of modernizing their component, and they got approval for the current project through the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. This does not include approval for a pass-through. I just want to give a heads up to the next committee that that's what CSEA is telling us. So we'll place that in committee report. I believe that's it. Members, any additions, any comments, any thoughts? If not, recommendation to pass with those amendments. Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 445, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Amato. Any reservations? Any noes?
Reservations.
Reservations for Rep. Garcia. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. Next bill, House Bill 349. Recommendation passed with the House Draft 1, tech amendments. We're going to adopt the judiciary's recommended amendments, and we're going to have a defective date of June 30th, 3000. June 30th, 3000. Members, anything else to add? Did I miss anything? Any comments, questions? Okay, if not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 349, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you, members. Next bill is House Bill 341. This has already been covered by a bill last year. So House Bill 341 is not needed. Chair's recommendation will be to defer this bill. Any questions, comments? If not, thank you very much. Next bill is House Bill 350. Recommendation is to pass with an HD1 tech amendments. We're going to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. And for the committee report, I turn to Representative Kobayashi. Some thoughts on
the bill contains the term substantial risk, and I'm not sure that substantial risk is adequately defined anywhere. So perhaps next committee could look into either defining the word substantial or deleting it.
Thank you. Let's place that in the committee report for Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs to contemplate. Anything else, members? Did I miss anything? If not, any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, my comment is that
Yes.
I support the intent of the bill, but my only concern is that this bill puts that precedent for government to start telling churches what to do and how to operate. So for those reasons, I'll be voting no.
Okay, thank you, Representative Garcia. Any further comments or thoughts? If not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Members voting on HB 350, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato and no vote for Rep. Garcia. Any reservations? Any other noes? All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, next bill, House Bill 583. Members, I had difficulty with this bill. There's a lot of corrections and amendments we need to make. In talking with our support staff and attorneys, they identified House Bill 261, which we'll be hearing, I believe, this Thursday, which is more on point. So recommendation will be to defer House Bill 583 and look at House Bill 261 as a vehicle for early learning. So Chair's recommendation, defer House Bill 583. Discussion, comments? Okay, thank you, members, appreciate it. Next bill is House Bill 339. Recommendation passed with an HD1. Tech amendments, effective date to June 30th, 3000. Wanted to note, and I'm glad Rep. Kobayashi brought this up, he asked Department of Human Services if 8 exempt positions were enough. We got a clarification from DHS. There's 2 more positions, deputy director position and a secretary position. We are not going to hear their other governor package bill, but we're going to roll those amendments in for those 2 positions. So I'm glad Rep. Kobayashi brought that up. It's going to be now 10 positions, not 8 positions, as we're adding the second deputy director and a secretary. Is that correct, DHS? Got it. Okay. Members, any questions? Okay, if not, recommendations passed with those recommendations. If I didn't say the effective date, it's June 30th, 3000. Please take the vote, Madam Chair.
Voting on HB 339, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? All others voting aye. Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you, members. Next bill is House Bill 552. Recommendation passed with an HD1. Tech amendments. Defective date, June 30th, 3000. Committee report. Let's put the comments by the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. And we've got some concerns regarding change, transfer program. I've got, and funding. I've got Representatives Garcia and Kobayashi that's going to be giving us their concerns, which will be placed in the committee report. Representative Garcia first.
Yeah, I just don't think that it's necessary. I mean, this is going to convert the current Victim Services Fund, which is pretty much nothing, to a trafficking reparations fund. It sounds just like a social justice bill to me. So for those reasons, I'll be voting with reservations.
Okay, we can have some of your concerns noted in the committee report. And Representative Kobayashi.
This bill broadens services for human trafficking. I'm not sure that their funds are sufficient and may require general fund appropriation.
Okay, and we should note Rep. Kobayashi's concerns in the committee report. Thank you very much. Members, again, recommendations to pass with an HD1. I believe I already said effective date June 30th, 3000. Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 552, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato and reservations for Rep. Garcia. Any other reservations? Any noes? All others vote aye. Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. Next bill is House Bill 579. Recommendations to pass with an HD1. Tech amendments. Effect the date to June 30th, 3000. We're going to place in the committee report concerns by the Attorney General's office. And for the amendments, we're going to adopt the amendments by the Commission on the Status of Women's, Status of Women. We're going to accept their amendments, recommended amendments. Members, any questions, thoughts? If not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 579, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? All others vote aye. Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you, members. Next bill is House Bill 439. Members, we're going to pass with an HD1. We're going to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Provide tech amendments. In addition, Rep. Kobayashi brought up another change. We already had the recommendations of the Friends of Civil Rights. We're going to adopt those amendments and do one further. In the bill, there was another shall. We're going to change the shall to the may. Okay, members, any, is that correct, Rep. Kobayashi?
Right.
Okay, anything else, members? Did I miss anything? Any comments? You guys good? Okay, we're going to, Madam Vice Chair, if that's the case, with the defective date of June 30th, 3000, if you can please take the vote for the HD1.
Sure. Voting on HB 439, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments noting Rep. Amato excused. Any reservations? Any noes? All others vote aye. Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. House Bill 470, recommendation is passed with the House Draft 1. We're going to defect the date to June 30th, 3000, just to make sure we got this bill correct. I don't want to make any mistakes on this, so we'll defect the date. In addition, DHS had a couple big recommended amendments. We are not going to put the amendments in the bill. We're going to put the amendments, recommended amendments by DHS, in the committee report. We want the Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs, should they hear this bill, to look at the recommended amendments. Important to note by both the Democratic Party of Hawaii and Chair Bellotti, they have concerns with the limit of 5 minors in shelters. Is there a way we can expand that without and staying in compliance with federal law? There's some other questions to be brought up, but we'd like to get those concerns in the committee report. We want to flag that for Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs so they can take the deep dive in this and see if we can address these issues. Because at the end of the day, it's public policy, and I agree with Chair Bellotti. Okay, so again, defective date, June 30th, 3000. Any questions? Okay, if not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 470, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments noting Rep. Amato excused. Any reservations? Any noes?
Oh, what? We got 5 more bills, short form bills. We got to vote on.
Sorry.
So Garcia had a no vote.
No. No vote for Rep. Garcia. All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. The following bills are for decision-making purposes only to insert substantive provisions into the short form bill. A public hearing will be scheduled at a later date, at which time testimony will be accepted. Members, House Bill 221 is a short form bill, general title relating to human services. I'm placing contents in for extended Medicaid coverage for incarcerated women. So recommendations to vote to move this out. Any questions? If not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote for the short form?
Sure. Voting on HB 221, passing with the HT for recommittal, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you, members. Next bill is House Bill 222, again, short form bill relating to human services. I'd like to place contents in regarding Medicaid reimbursement rate. If there's no questions, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 222, passing with the HD for recommittal, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations or noes? All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next bill is House Bill 223, general title relating to human services. Purpose is to provide appropriations to Office of Youth Services, which is under the Department of Human Services. Any questions? If not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 223, passing HD to recommit. Rep. Amato's excused. Any other reservations or noes? All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next bill is House Bill 224 relating to human services. Members, the contents of this relates to public housing, which is under the Department of Human Services, to provide on-the-job training for employment to our tenants that live in public housing. I think it's worthy of discussion. That's the contents I want to put into House Bill 224. Any questions? If not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 224, passing with the HD for recommittal, knowing excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations or noes? All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Last bill on the agenda, House Bill 225, general title relating to human services. I'd like to put in the content relating to child welfare system to comply with federal regulations, which may allow Department of Human Services to receive federal matching funds. Any questions? If not, Madam Vice Chair, can you please take the vote?
Voting on HB 225, passing with the HD for recommittal, noting the excused absence of Rep. Amato. Any reservations or noes? All others vote aye. Chair recommendations adopted.
To the members and testifiers, thank you very much. We're now adjourned.